Have you ever wondered what happens when the king of country finally speaks his mind? At 73 years old, George Strait, one of the most private and reserved legends in music, has broken decades of silence to talk about another icon, Toby Keith. And trust me, what he revealed will make you see both men in a whole new light. But why did George Strait choose this moment to open up? And what exactly did he say about a man who shook Nashville with his bold lyrics and larger-than-life personality? Stay with me, because we're not just sharing words. We're taking a journey through George Strait's incredible life, the tragedies that shaped him, and the rare moment when this cowboy tipped his hat to another. To understand why George Strait's words carry such weight, we have to go back to where it all began. A tiny town in South Texas called Poteet, where on May 18, 1952, George Harvey Strait Sr. entered the world. Life in Poteet wasn't about bright lights or big dreams. It was about early mornings, hard work, and the quiet pride of small-town living. George grew up in nearby Pearsall, surrounded by ranch land and endless skies, a landscape that shaped his sense of freedom and responsibility. His father, a junior high math teacher who also ran a small cattle ranch, instilled discipline and humility early on. When George's parents separated, he and his brother stayed with their father, a decision that anchored him in the values of family and resilience. Music wasn't George's first priority in those days. In fact, his early exposure to music came from the classics: Hank Williams, Merle Haggard, and George Jones. These were the voices that filled rural Texas, singing songs about heartbreak, loyalty, and grit. They weren't just background noise. They were lessons in storytelling. George soaked them in without realizing he was laying the foundation for a future legacy. But life had other plans before music could take over. After graduating from Pearsall High School in 1971, George didn't head straight to Nashville. He headed into uniform. He enlisted in the United States Army, where he served honorably and was stationed in Hawaii. It was there, far from the Texas plains, that something remarkable happened. George picked up a guitar and joined an Army-sponsored band called Rambling Country. This wasn't just a hobby. Those small performances taught him something that no stage in Nashville ever could: how to connect with people through honesty and simplicity. Playing for fellow soldiers, George learned the power of music to comfort, inspire, and unite, a lesson that would echo throughout his career. When his service ended, George didn't dive headfirst into music stardom. Instead, he returned home and pursued a degree in agriculture at Southwest Texas State University, now Texas State University. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The man who would one day become the king of country was just as committed to the land as he was to the stage. That's George Strait in a nutshell: rooted, steady, and always true to where he came from. When George Strait finally decided to chase his passion, the road to success was anything but smooth. In the late 1970s, country music was drifting toward a pop-infused sound, leaving little room for a pure traditionalist like George. But he didn't bend. He stayed committed to the steel guitars and fiddle-driven melodies that reminded him of Texas dance halls. That authenticity would soon become his greatest weapon. His big break came in 1981 with the release of Unwand. This wasn't just another country single. It was a thunderclap. In a music scene dominated by crossover acts, George's voice sounded like home, like the dust and soul of the Texas plains. The song shot up the charts, landing him his first taste of real stardom and proving that fans were still hungry for something real. That same year, his debut album, Strait Country, hit the shelves. The title itself was a statement, a declaration that George Strait was here to revive the roots of country music. And he didn't stop there. Album after album, single after single, George built a career brick by brick, grounded in authenticity. Then came the classics, the kind of songs that didn't just top charts, they became part of American culture. Amarillo by Morning, a rodeo anthem so timeless it still echoes in arenas today. The Chair, a clever, conversational love song that showcased George's understated charm. Oceanfront Property, where Texas humor met heartache in a way only Strait could pull off. By the end of the 1980s, George Strait wasn't just a rising star, he was a force. While others were blending country with pop, George doubled down on tradition, and fans rewarded him for it. By staying true to his roots, he didn't just survive the changing tides of the industry, he shaped them. And the numbers? They tell the story. Over time, George amassed more #1 hits than any artist in any genre, 60 in total. He sold over 100 million records, filled stadiums, and racked up award after award, including multiple CMA Entertainer of the Year titles. But perhaps the most remarkable thing? Through it all, he never lost his humility. No scandals, no headlines, just music. George Strait had done the impossible. He brought country music back to its roots while taking it to new heights. The King of Country wasn't just a title, it was the truth. Behind the glittering awards, the sold-out arenas, and the record-breaking hits stood a man whose heart belonged not to fame, but to family. For George Strait, the spotlight was never the goal. It was a tool, a platform that allowed him to provide, to create, and to honor the people who mattered most. And at the center of it all was Norma Voss, his high school sweetheart and the quiet anchor of his world. Their love story began long before George was a star, back in their teenage years in Pearsall, Texas. It wasn't some whirlwind romance born out of glitz. It was simple, steady, and real. In December 1971, while most were planning lavish weddings, George and Norma slipped away and eloped to Mexico, marrying in private without fanfare. That decision said everything about who they were. Fiercely independent, deeply loyal, and uninterested in the trappings of attention. Just months later, the couple welcomed their first child, Jennifer Lynn Strait, in October 1972. For George, becoming a father was life-changing. Even as he chased his dream of a music career, home was sacred. When George talked about those early years, he often said he tried to keep things as normal as possible, despite the growing chaos of fame. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. On June 25, 1986, tragedy struck, the kind that leaves scars you never see. Jennifer, just 13 years old, died in a car accident near San Marcos, Texas. That single moment shattered George's world. Friends and fans noticed the change immediately. He withdrew from interviews, avoided the press, and spoke rarely about the loss, even decades later. But through that silence, George found another voice: his music. In memory of Jennifer, George and Norma established the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to helping children in need. Every donation, every dollar raised, became a way to turn unspeakable grief into something that could make the world a little better. It was George's way of ensuring that his daughter's light never dimmed completely. Even through heartbreak, George held fast to the pillars that defined him: faith, family, and humility. In a world where fame often erodes values, he stood firm, showing that even kings can live by simple truths. And perhaps that's the real reason fans connect with him so deeply, because behind the legend is a man who knows the price of love and the weight of loss. By 2013, after decades of touring, George decided to slow down. His Cowboy Rides Away tour became one of the biggest farewell tours in music history, ending in Arlington, Texas, with over 104,000 fans, the largest indoor concert in North American history. And yet, he didn't disappear. George still performs select shows, especially in Las Vegas, and continues to mentor young artists. His name isn't just a brand, it's a beacon for what country music should be: authentic, honest, timeless. Now, after all these years of staying quiet on industry drama, George Strait spoke up. And the subject? Toby Keith. Toby Keith burst onto the scene in the 90s, a brash Oklahoma cowboy with a deep voice and a fearless attitude. Songs like Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue and American Soldier made him a superstar and a lightning rod for controversy. George and Toby couldn't have been more different musically. George was pure traditional. Toby leaned toward country rock swagger. But what George said about him? It'll change the way you see both men. Here are his exact words. Our styles were different, George admitted. But Toby had that fire. His songwriting captured something real: patriotism, working-class pride, raw emotion. He gave a voice to people who felt unheard. George went further, speaking about Toby's courage during his battle with stomach cancer. Toby didn't want pity. He wanted to keep doing what he loved: writing songs, getting on stage, making people feel something. That takes a rare kind of heart. And then, the line that stopped everyone in their tracks. You get to a point where you look back more than you look ahead, George said quietly. And when you do, you realize how important it is to say what's on your heart while you still can. From a man who spent his entire career avoiding drama and headlines, these words carried a weight you can't fake. It wasn't just about Toby Keith. It was about respect, mortality, and the bond between two men who lived life on their own terms. George closed his tribute with this: country music's got room for all of us, cowboys, rebels, poets, and patriots. Toby shook things up, and that mattered. He was one of a kind. Two legends, two paths, one truth. It's not about charts or fame. It's about heart, integrity, and the stories we leave behind. And that's why, long after the music stops, both George Strait and Toby Keith will ride together in the history of American music. If George Strait's words moved you as much as they moved me, hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss a future upload. Thanks for watching.